going on, patriots, patriottes, and all the rest of you slack-jawed bastards out there? I titled this, Don't Let Freedom Slip Away, and this is going to be a two-parter. I'm not going to be able to cover everything in the 10 minutes and 59 seconds I'm allowed here. But this was sent to me. It originated from an individual named Kitty Worthman, last name spelled W-E-R-T-H-M-A-N-N. Feel free to look her up. Kind of definitely adds a little bit of perspective and kind of gives you a different appreciation for things that you see around you that's going on today. So I felt compelled to go ahead and read this to y'all. A letter that she wrote. Actually, it's more of an article. That way we could all become just somewhat more educated. What I have to tell you, or what I am about to tell you, is something you've probably never heard or will never read in history books. I believe I'm an eyewitness to history. I cannot tell you that Hitler took Austria by tanks and guns. It would distort history. We elected him by a landslide, 98% of the vote. I've never read that in any American publications. Everyone thinks that Hitler just rolled in with his tanks and took Austria by force. In 1938, Austria was in deep depression. Nearly one-third of our workforce was unemployed. We had 25% inflation and 25% bank loan interest rates. Farmers and business people were declaring bankruptcy daily. Young people were going from house to house begging for food. Not that they didn't want to work, there just simply weren't any jobs. My mother was a Christian woman and believed in helping people in need. Every day we cooked a big kettle of soup and baked bread to feed those poor, hungry people, about 30 daily. The Communist Party and the National Socialist Party were fighting each other. Blocks and blocks of cities like Vienna, Linz, and Graz were destroyed. People became desperate and petitioned the government to let them decide what kind of government they wanted. We looked to our neighbor to the north, Germany, where Hitler had been in power since 1933. We had been told they didn't have unemployment or crime. They had a high standard of living. Nothing was ever said about persecution of any group, Jewish or otherwise. We were led to believe that everyone was happy. We wanted the same way of life in Austria. We were promised a vote for Hitler would mean the end of unemployment and help for the family. Hitler also said that businesses would be assisted and farmers would get their farms back. 98% of the people voted to annex Austria to the Germany and have Hitler our ruler. We were overjoyed, and for 3 days we danced in the streets, had candlelight parades. The new government opened up big field kitchens and everyone was fed. After the election, German officials were appointed, and like a miracle, we suddenly had law and order. 3 or 4 weeks later, everyone was employed. The government made sure that there was a lot of work created through the public work service. Hitler decided we should have equal rights for women. Before this, it was custom that married Austrian women did not work outside the home. An able-bodied husband would be looked down upon if he couldn't support his family. Many women in the teaching profession were elated when they could retain the jobs they previously had been required to give up for marriage. Hitler targets education and eliminates religious instruction for children. Our education was nationalized. I attended a very good public school. The population was predominantly Catholic, so we had religion in our schools. The day we elected Hitler, March 13th, 1938, I walked into my schoolroom to find the crucifix replaced by Hitler's picture hanging next to a Nazi flag. Our teacher, a very devout woman, stood up and told the class we wouldn't pray or have religion anymore. Instead, we sang Deutschland, Deutschland über alles and had physical education. Sunday became National Youth Day with compulsory attendance. Parents were not pleased about the sudden change in curriculum. They were told that if they did not send us, they would receive a stiff letter of warning the first time. The second time, they would be fined the equivalent of $300 American, and the third time, they would be subject to jail. The first 2 hours consisted of political indoctrination. The rest of the day, we had sports. As time went along, we loved it. Oh, we had so much fun and got our sports equipment for free. We would go home and gleefully tell our parents about the wonderful time we had. My mother was very unhappy. When the next term started, she took me out of public school and put me in a convent. I told her that I didn't want to go, and she told me that when I grew up one day, I would be grateful. There was very good curriculum, but hardly any fun. No sports and no political indoctrination. I hated it. I hated it at first, but I felt I could tolerate it. Every once in a while on holidays, I went home. I would go back to my old friends and ask what was going on and what they were doing. Their loose lifestyle was very alarming to me. They lived without religion. By that time, unwed mothers were glorified for having a baby for Hitler. It seemed strange to me that our society changed so suddenly as time went along. I realized what a great deed my mother did, so I wasn't exposed to that kind of humanistic philosophy. And equal rights hits home. In 1939, the war started and a food bank was established. All food was rationed and could only be purchased using food stamps. At the same time, a full employment law was passed, which means if you didn't work, you didn't get a ration card, and if you didn't have a ration card, you starved to death. Women who stayed home to raise their families didn't have any marketable skills and often had to take jobs more suited for men. After this, the draft was implemented. It was compulsory for young people, male and female, to give 1 year to the labor corps. During the day, girls worked on farms, and at night they returned to their barracks for military training just like the boys. They were trained to be anti-aircraft gunners and participated in the Signal Corps. After the labor corps, they were not discharged but were used in the front lines. When I go back to Austria to visit my family and friends, most of these women were emotional cripples because they just were not equipped to handle the horrors of combat. 3 months before I turned 18, I was severely injured in an air raid attack and nearly had a leg amputated, so I was spared having to go into the labor corps and into military service. Hitler restructured the family through daycare. When mothers go out in the workforce, the government immediately established child care centers. You could take your children from the ages 4 weeks to school age and leave them for round the clock, 7 days a week, under total care of the government. There were no motherly women to take care of these children. The whole state raised an entire generation of children, and there were just people highly trained in child psychology. By this time, no one talked about equal rights. We knew we had been had. Under health care, we knew that we had been had. Health care and small businesses suffer under government control. Before Hitler, we had very good medical care. Many American doctors trained at the University of Vienna. After Hitler, health care was socialized, free for everyone. Doctors were salaried by the government. The problem was, since it was free, the people were going to the doctors for everything. When a good doctor arrived at his office at 8 a.m., 40 people were already waiting. And at the same time, the hospitals were full. If you needed elective surgery, you had to wait a year or two for your turn. There was no money for research as it was poured into socialized medicine. Research at the medical schools literally stopped, so the best doctors left Austria and immigrated into other countries. As for health care, our tax rates went up to 80% of our income. Newlyweds immediately received a $1,000 loan from the government to establish a household. We had big programs for families. All daycare and education were free. High schools were taken over by the government and college tuition was subsidized. Everyone was entitled to free handouts such as food stamps, clothing, and housing. We had another agency designed to monitor business. My brother-in-law owned a restaurant that had square tables. Government officials told him he had to replace them with round tables because people might bump themselves on the corners. Then they said he had to have additional bathroom facilities. It was just a small dairy business with a snack bar. He couldn't meet all the demands. Soon he went out of business. If the government owned the large businesses and not many small ones existed, it could be in control. We had consumer protection. We were told how to shop and what to buy. Free enterprise was essentially abolished. We had a planning agency specifically designed for farmers. The agents would come in, go to the farms, count the livestock, and tell the farmers what to produce and how to produce it. I'm going to stop it here, and we're going to continue on with the mercy killings being redefined.